What's up? I am back. I'm still alive. Today I wanted to go through my new track and show you how I wrote The Last Dawn. This is the Ableton project. Yeah, let's get on with it. So this is I'll just start with the intro. So this is the track. So yeah, that's the intro. Really, really simple. Almost boring. Not quite, but it's got like the main hook in there. I've forgotten to open all of these. So you'll notice I'm in Ableton, whereas I used to write in Cubase. I still do write in Cubase, but I've switched to Ableton for more public kind of tracks because it kind of allows me to be a bit more creative without templates, because I can then create things that aren't orchestral or that are just different. Like I think I got stuck in Cubase with the same sort of sounds, the same strings, the same brass, the same everything. So I was just kind of like, I need something different. And I was always mixing in Ableton because I like the mixing workflow of Ableton a bit more. So I am in Ableton now. I still occasionally use Cubase for some things. There's some MIDI things it's just better at. So I'll start with the piano. This is all bounce to audio, but I can tell you that this isn't bounce to audio. I use the Gentleman, I think it's called. It's a piano from Contact, so this is just really simple. And then this is the chords, I think. Yep. It's 2 layers, nothing super fancy. Some of the sounds are kind of cool. This is a sound I made in Serum 2 that I filtered out and then heavily distorted and then reverbed, obviously, just to create some sort of sense of like a signature sound or recognizable. And I used it again here for the break, but we'll get to that in a second. I was pretty happy with the atmospheres in this. So this is kind of cool. This is... Wait, it's not this. This is Pacific Strings, Whisper Strings, just the full ensemble. Sitting in the back of the mix. Yeah, really nice. And then a bunch of drones and stuff that I've manipulated and layered together. And this sound here is really cool. I'll get to that in a second. So this is just from an Ava sample pack, I think. The text is so small. There's one thing I am not used to yet in Ableton, because I did switch back recently, is just the text on everything. I can size the UI, but I'm using a new screen. It's 4K and it's just, yeah, just got to get used to it. So then another drone here. You can barely hear it. But it just adds, like, as soon as I take it away from the mix, you can kind of tell. This is actually an organ that's... Wait, is this the organ or is this... No, this isn't the organ. This is the piano section with lots and lots of delay and reverb. And it's been pitched around up and down and re-recorded a bunch of times. To get like interesting textures and stuff. So that was a cool little element. And then, yeah, then we get to the break, which is not super... There's a kind of a cool sound up here, which I to this. So this is from a bass sound that I made. I have a very small growing library of, I don't know if it's that or if it's maybe this. I can't remember. I have a bass patch somewhere where I disgustingly pitched it down in Serum rather than in the waveform, and then it just gets these like clicky where you get to like frequencies that aren't really hearable. And then I disgustingly distorted it, and so I can do it really quick here. So essentially what I've done is, and then I have a bunch of, there we are. I think it's this one, which is just a really big signal chain of lots of distortion, lots of effects, and just lots of just distortion plugins, and then some also. Well, you see the chain now. If it loads, there is a lot of things going on. Actually, this is kind of small. There's definitely bigger ones. Saturn, and then some EQ, some playing with some new Rift stuff. I think this was a tutorial that I may have followed. Not sure. And then that sort of makes this. So I'll make it. But then if we go down a bunch, we get this. We get that. That like click. So essentially, if you take that and you pitch it down, and then add some reverb and some distortion, you sort of get this. So that's how I made that, which is so that was kind of fun. So then we'll get to the build. Which is kind of where we get to like the main bit. And this is where I did some fun things. So this sound down here. So that's just an organ with disgusting amount of reverb and delay on. And I think I actually have it playing. Yeah, I do have it playing here. So it's playing that melody, but it's pitched down and it's just got ridiculous amounts of reverb and stuff. And it's just creating like a really nice atmosphere over the whole thing, along with a bunch of other sort of keep forest atmosphere kind of things. This is really cool. I like that one. That's almost a signature sound in itself. Just like a bunch of those, some rises. I also have the ticking in this. It's not really super noticeable because I think the ticking is really overused, so I was just like, but in saying that, I do like the effect, but I wanted it to just be somewhat unique. So I've slowly filtered it in and created this swing, which we get from the Echo Boy, I think. Nope, turns out I got rid of the swing. I think I wanted the swing, but it just didn't quite fit. Which that slowly comes in over time. What else do we have? We have obviously the strings, which is just Pacific strings, I think. I don't think I used Cinematic Studio strings as well as a layer. So they start off really basic, just playing the pedal. This plays there's like a line underneath that gets played that I thought fit really well that you can't really hear, but without it, it just like felt really boring. So you can barely hear this extra line. But in the mix, it sort of just like fits really well. That was it before. So yeah, we just have those. Those are just violin, violas and cellos rather. There's the organ. The piano doesn't come in till later. This is a cool diva patch, which is barely audible. Just a filtered saw wave, nothing special. This is I think the same patch, but grossly distorted. No, it must be this. Or this. Yeah, that's that one. This is a different patch. I've probably just gone through the presets and found something that I've used before or liked. There's also this bass patch, which is also diva, which is again just a saw. Which builds in. There's some booms up here, nothing special. You can sort of hear the ticking slowly come in. And you can hear the organ in the background, which I really like. And then this build part 2 is probably my favorite part of the entire track. I don't know what it is, and this is what sparked this idea in this track. Was I was sketching around with a piano and came up with this really fun spiccato idea, which was essentially this. Wait, I lied. It was actually this. So here I'm using the Pacific strings for more of the room. And then the Cinematic Studio strings for more of like the punch. And then close up. Yeah, so that's not quite it. This is... I got a little too ahead of myself. This is where the bass comes in, which is... This is the re-space, which I think I just used phase plant for. And this is a sub bass underneath it. Still experimenting whether we need a sub bass, like a separate sub, like EDM for orchestral music. But this one, it kind of worked. I think I crushed them together pretty hard with something, probably satin. I like the way this comes in. And then I have some low drums, which I'm pretty happy with. I've always sort of struggled to get percussion to not be like too hard hitting, but also like not muddy in a build up. It's really easy to like go super hard and get the velocities too high too quick. But then if the velocity is really low, it's like too inaudible. You can use compression and stuff, but I didn't really want to do that. So I've seen some pitching tricks. So I tried that. So essentially took the same MIDI and the same instruments in the climax, which sounds like this. Took the velocities down a little bit and then pitched everything down as well. So like went into the contact and pitched it down, I think, between 3 and 5 semitones. So, and then you get this. I've also added this reverb, and I think I probably bounced out all the changes, but there was a fair amount of cleanup involved. I had to reduce a lot of the like 500, 700 sort of mud, and I had to clean up the subs because if you pitch a bass drum down, there's a lot more unnecessary sub that you sort of get with it that you don't really need. I kind of wanted it for more of the like room low percussion tone, and then I had to add in this sort of kick drum / boom, which layers in, which is a bit more of a thud, like because when you pitch things down, it sort of lost that power for me. So then I combined all these booms together to make it sort of punch a bit more. So yeah, this kind of introduces the melody, the like rhythmic element for later. So that to me sounds a lot better than what I had originally done, which originally I think I literally just did this more or less, and then I didn't have that, and I did have that. And like I did turn the velocities down to make it match, but it just didn't quite have the, I don't know, it just didn't have the feel that I wanted. So yeah, did those. Those are fun. Bass is fun. More synths under here. This is the next section, but this is the signature sound. So I believe that's a keep forest sound that I've pitched up initially and then slowly pitched down into, so I think this goes into F because this song's in F, and then slowly pitches down to E. Yeah, pretty much. And then just with gross reverb and delay and all these kind of things. I think we're about to get to the new section. This is just some more strings to the background. So here I'm layering Pacific strings, which I really like. Lots of reverb on this. Actually, I can tell you it's cinematic rooms, and it's very, very wet. It's probably too wet than it needs to be, but I like the sound. And then the Abbey Road 1, which I don't really add reverb to because it just sounds good. This is behind it. Barely. I think it just sounds like shinier, like it has a nice high end that I liked it with it rather than without it. I go to like here. Yeah, and it gives it a bit more space rather than just slapping a reverb on. More atmospheres down here, some rises, and then the ticking continues. So this is actually my favorite part of the song, this next part. And one of the funniest things about this is that I actually really got it wrong. So if you listen to the short strings, like it's playing the main melody or the main ostinato, and I kind of messed it up big time. So I'll play it and see if you notice it. Probably can't hear. I mean, I can hear it. It's sort of annoying me. So there's a couple of things with this. There's obviously like the main, which I wrote that on the piano and then was like, this needs to be a song, and then that's how sort of we got here. So this is funny actually. Obviously, like I have, like it's pretty known that I don't release to YouTube that much because I have all the private trailer work and client work and such. But one of the big issues I've found over my career is it's really hard to commit to ideas knowing that it's like maybe not a great idea and you get stuck in that loop. Anyone who's a composer sort of knows that feeling. So obviously I liked Ableton because you can bounce things to audio really easily compared to Cubase, which like you can, but then Cubase workflow doesn't really suit it to bouncing to audio, at least for me and the way that I'd set up my templates. Whereas Ableton just works a bit better. So this is actually, so I'd committed to this idea in audio really early because it was like the main idea that I really liked. And then I more or less couldn't be bothered to reload a contact patch and put this an octave up and then turn it down in the mix. So I literally just copied and pasted it. And then you can see the filtering down here. It's super narrow. Because that's gross. And then obviously a lot of reverb, some large random hole. And then laid it with this. Just adds a little bit. Not a whole lot. Anyways, I think the bit... Yeah, this. So I'd put it too low for violins and didn't realize until actually after I released the song, which is really funny. But I found the project with all the MIDI and put it up to see if it would make it kind of any better. I actually kind of like how low these violins sound. It almost sounds better, and I think it's because it accentuates those specific notes. And I think I did it in the cello as well. No, I lied. No, just the second violins. It's funny because now they've singled it out. You can probably hear those really low violins don't quite sound right, but it kind of fits. At least in my head. And then same thing down here with the CSS ones. But I think I've inverted the same thing. And yeah, the same thing happened. I just didn't realize. I think I just copy and pasted it and then inverted it and didn't really listen. Just tried to listen to it in the mix and just was like... It kind of fits really well. I'll go through all the processing at the end of the track, just in case you're probably looking at all these things. There's a lot of processing before I got to this stage as well, which I'll sort of explain. More strings, like just long strings. I really like these choirs. These aren't choirs, these are bass guitars. Just adding, and then I think taking away the bass, yeah, because there's a lot of bass in this part. You can barely hear them, but they're there. And then this is the choirs. I like the choirs here. This is just Oceania too. And then my next favorite part of this, other than the main melody, is this piano. Just the way it comes in here is just really satisfying. Nothing percussion. There's some rises down the bottom. And then I have that same watery, pulsy, this. It's a really odd sound, but I kind of feel like it's really unique, so I just kept it in. And then I have this pluck, which plays through. I had a lot of different ideas for how to do this break, and a lot of really interesting ideas, but I just end up falling on whatever the simplest one was, which I think was this. I think I had a lot of glitch effects and all these kind of random things for this, but I just always felt like this was just the naturalist sounding. And then I think down here I just have some, really basic rises. So we'll start with the top. Yeah, I should go top down. I'm getting lost in my own project. That's the one thing Ableton isn't that good at compared to Cubase, is you can resize all these things, but once you resize them, you lose like the functionality. So can be a bit annoying like that. All right, so the metals is just cymbals. So I think this top one is just the Hans Zimmer cymbals. I use them in most things. I've found this sample a long time ago, and I've just used it all the time because it just is really good at this climaxy stuff. It's from, I think it's called That Sound, and it's a Splice sample pack that I got years ago called Hanger. It just has really nice, I don't know, nice high end and nice aggressive thing at the start. Don't know where I found this. I think these together just sound really nice. I also have these additional cymbals down here that add to the main hits. Another reason why I like working in audio and I like working in Ableton's audio, it's really easy to chop these up and fade them and make them really clean and not spill into things they shouldn't. And I know you can do that in Cubase, but I just find it easier in here. Yeah, I've been working on trying to get really nice percussion for many years, and I feel like this song has certainly helped me get closer to what I want. So this is the toms. So Magnum is from Decadence. I don't think I did anything to that. I think that just sounded really good off the bat. I might have EQ'd it a little bit, but I wouldn't have done anything else. Damage. I just like the sound of Damage in basically anything. And this is the main sound in these. I think the Decadence toms or the Magnum one, it does sound a bit synthetic. So I think layering it with Damage just gives it a bit of warmth that I like. Medusa is something I've used for a really long time, but I've recently discovered how to use it that kind of makes it fit everything. And that's to use really, really, really low velocities, especially in orchestral stuff. So those velocities are like 40 and 50 or so. Like they're super low. It still sounds really sharp and pointy, but it sounds a lot better to me than when you play them really high and then just compressing the crap out of them and raising them in volume, which I think I've done here. Yeah. And that gives it a really heavy tom feel. Whereas like this could just be percussion. This is kind of like now you're getting that tom feeling. And then this is 8DO, which I've used forever. This is just a really good room sound. I've experimented for years with putting reverb on percussion or not. I've kind of discovered it's like a fair amount cleaner to try avoid it and just layer percussion that makes sense. So this is like a good room tone. This has barely any, well, it has room on it, but not compared to like a Damage or something else. So then altogether it sounds like this. So if we get rid of like the close. Yeah, so that's what I did this time for the tom stacks. And again, I'll go through processing at the end. And then the low perk we kind of went through already. I'm really happy with how this turned out, actually. It's really easy to let low percussion just ring out. So the one thing I'll talk about with processing real quick is this Pro MB patch that I found from a friend a long time ago about how to clean up the rumble from Damage, because it does have a lot of low-end rumble, and it's just these kind of things where you're just compressing the low end based on the high end trigger from a internal sidechain, and it just... And you can sort of adjust this, however. So if you have a faster track that's quite quick, which there's a track I'm working on at the moment, which is a lot faster than this. This is 95. I think the track I'm working on is like 150. And you can turn this release down. It goes really... Then it's very, very tight. I did want it to sound somewhat natural though. So that's the low percussion. And then I have a ton of like hits and stuff. I've over a long time used the same like 3 or 4 hits. So I've really tried to go away from that in this one. So I've got some punches to layer with the hits. because some hits you get lost in big mixes, and I've never really figured out how to not do that as well. And then, so yeah, I've just used a lot of Keep Forest. I think it's all Keep Forest actually. They just have really good hits in like all of their libraries, so that's just what I keep using. And then it's just layered to taste. Like that crunch and whatever that is really nice. And then really liked the high end here. And you can hear this in the mix fairly well. Just as like a nice hit. And then use these shorter ones to sort of layer with the tom rolls. And the cymbals as well. And then the same at the end here. Some of these are high cut, some of them aren't. Like I just kind of used my ear on like, all right, what needs to be high cut and what is sitting really well. All of it needed to be shortened. Like these are the normal length of these hits. And there's no way I didn't know this until recently. There's no way you're doing this in a climax and not high passing. You can see all the rumble there. That's just going to carry through until the next thing. So that's sort of the decision there. And then this is the bass. It's pretty much the same as before, just the Reese and the sub smushed together with some distortion. Yeah, nothing too complicated there. Again, I don't know if the separate sub is maybe super necessary. There's some bass sounds that I really like that are a lot thicker in the low end that I might use in other tracks. And then this is the synths. These are probably a lot quieter than what I would normally have synths, but this mix kind of just didn't really need them to be super in the front. So this is the same pluck as before. Can barely hear it, but it really pushes the strings out a little bit. Like without having it, it just feels like the strings are only in the high end as opposed to sort of in the mids or the high mids. This is the really distorted pluck that sort of sits nicely with it. Gives it good high end. And then this is the same saw pluck as before. This is now playing the, I guess, quote unquote, counter melody that's like underneath the main ostinato. You can barely hear this in the mix, I think. Yeah, I wonder if that's super necessary. I can't hear it, but my mix is quite low at the moment. This is the signature sound, which I really like for this track. I mean, it's fairly generic, but I like it because it works. This is a lower version as well. This is just another lead sound that is layering with the horns. And I'll get to the horns in a bit. The piano plays. Actually, so this is the first original piano sketch that I made. So this is the full idea. The only thing that's added to this is I didn't work out what the main melody on the horns was going to be until after, but that original riff is, yeah, that's the original piano that I came up with the entire track for. And then this is the organ playing again. So this is actually playing the same ostinato bit in halftime, and just reverbed, and just it sort of just gives this overwhelming atmosphere, swell kind of vibe. Yeah, this is the short strings. They're basically doing the same thing. I believe the second violins are playing the right octave now. Yes, they are. So that mistake was only in the build up. Took a lot of experimentation to get these to sit in the mix well, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So the long strings just... Yeah, just sitting in the back, really. And then the brass. I've got a bunch of... Yeah, I got a lot of layers here. So the horn, I call them horns leads because they're acting like leads, and I like to process them slightly differently to the rest of the brass. This is 12 horns. There's 2 layers, one playing high, one playing low, and they're hard panned left and hard panned right. I've actually never done that before. I don't know why I decided to do it now. I feel like it just sounded good, and I needed it to be a bit wider. Sounds kind of yuck when I play them together. And then the 4 horns is from Cinematic Studio Brass. So that's kind of playing down the center to give it some focus. And it has a lot of a close sound compared to the 12 horns. Compared to like the low. And they're like legitimately hard panned to the left, which maybe I shouldn't have hard panned it, but that's okay. Took me a while to come up with this melody, but essentially it was just trial and error of I just want something really, really simple because I did want the ostinato and the signature sound to be the main focus. And then this is the brass stacks. So at some stage in the creative process, I realized that the sub and the Reese didn't quite have enough like a low end. People call it mud, but I'm just gonna call it like warmth. If there's not enough of it, it was very cold sounding. So I think it's this that has it. Yeah. So if I play it without that, and I think maybe this as well. No, not so much. It's kind of, and then this one. It just feels a bit more weighty in the lower frequencies, and I just kind of liked it. Like maybe it's a bit muddy, but I kind of liked it because I was just hard high cutting most of these brass stacks, but it just sounded better in my opinion with that in. So that's the trailer low brass from Keep Forest, like the old Keep Forest, Devastator I think it's called. And then we've got 12 horns. I was a bit lazy with these, to be honest. I should have modulated the mod wheel a bit more, but I just didn't. The reason why I didn't is originally this was meant to be a very synth heavy kind of track. The ostinato that I wrote in the piano sketch was, I put that on synth first and I was like, this sounds really cool. So it was meant to be a synth track and then it just ended up evolving into this. So this is two trombones, probably from Pacific Brass. This is the 12 trombones from Junkie XL Brass. They get? Yeah, they're just some warmth. And they're soft panned left and right, these two separately. This is the Monster Low Brass, which I think everyone uses in every trailer track ever. But it just has such a great sound. The trailer low brass from before, and then a tuba. I think this is the Pacific tubas, the two tubas. And altogether it sounds... I'm fairly happy with how this turned out. I think sometimes there's a little cut and boost here. I think without this it sounds... cleaner, a little bit less nasally. sometimes it's easy for me to get really aggressive with the brass stacks, and they can sound just like super thin and very just high and heavy, like very synthy. So I tried to strike the balance of like warmth, but not muddy, but not super overly bright. And like, I think I almost got there. I'm pretty happy with it. This is the most random section of the entire track. There's a bunch of ideas here that you can barely hear, but like without them, I just felt like it felt better. This is the guitar section. So there's almost like a bit of a horror out of tune kind of bit with some of the leads. So that this is the bass. This is the same as this before, I think. A little bit more distorted. They're panned left and right. Not super hard panned. Almost hard panned, but there. There's a lead guitar here that's doing like a pedal tone. And then just a flare on the end, I guess. This is the same, but this goes out of key. Oh, I'm at the wrong section. Yeah. Goes out of sec. It was like in some songs really works and some songs it doesn't. I had this high in the mix originally and it just didn't work, but then I turned it down and it kind of gave like nice tension. You would be really lucky if you could hear that, I think. I think I was just like, I'll keep it in, why not? And then this is a guitar stack of just, I think I was playing the chords or power chords with different guitar layers to see if I could thicken it up. So normally I use a lot of synths to thicken up the mix, but I decided on guitars this time and I kind of liked how it sounded. It's barely noticeable, but it was noticeable enough for me originally to keep them in. I think originally I had them around here as well. Yeah, and then you sort of can't hear them after that. And then the choir is one of my favorite parts. So I like the A and B section of this climax because the first half I just have them playing like the same chord. And then in the second half, they follow the chords. Which I feel is like a nice release of tension after the pedal tones in the first half. No atmospheres here, just cluttered up the mix. I tried it initially, tried to get this one. Yeah, this one. Because I did like how that sounded, but you just couldn't hear it. And yeah, not much point, even though I've kept like 4 things in this mix that you can't really hear, but that's okay. And then the B section. The strings just go up. I don't even think the synths go up. I think it's just the strings. And the choirs obviously follow that new... Yeah, the synths don't even follow. And then there's some more heavy percussion in the back end. And then to finish, we have this reverse piano that slows down, which I've never really done before, but it just sounded really cool. An atmosphere. So a lot of songs do the whole like tempo slowdown. I didn't do a tempo slowdown. I just did time warp, which is exclusive to Ableton. I'm sure other DAWs can do it. But I just stumbled across a tutorial in my feed and I was like, I'll do that in the outro of this because I couldn't work out how to finish it. So at least you just get slower. And I really liked how that sounded with the this pad modulation thing. I had to turn it way down because it was a bit overpowering. So that, and then there was a boom at the end, of course. Have to end with a boom. It's criminal not to. So I'll go through the processing. I'll start with the master and then I'll go through everything else. So, and obviously you can see all the analyzers up here. And that's sort of, I make some decisions based on that, but not a lot. I went through a bunch of different mastering chains for this and settled on this one that I have. So if I just play this without the master. So other than being quiet, I'll turn it up so that it's the same. So I haven't done a whole lot with this master other than make it wider and add some decent saturation. So the first Pro Q, so this is an interesting one, which I've never really done before, but I kind of wanted to just not follow advice and break a bunch of rules and listen. I listened to a bunch of reference tracks, trying to figure out which way I wanted to go this, and then have these analyzers up here, which I really like. And the biggest interesting thing that I found with some reference tracks these days is that the mid side is not out of balance, but like people would say it's too wide. If I play this section here, so see how the red is above the blue? So this is a preset you can get. I think it's just, it comes with span. And it's essentially the blue is the mid and the red is the side. I think I changed the colors actually. Normally the sides are not louder than the mids in most like pop music and stuff. And everyone sort of tells you not to break that rule. And I was listening to a bunch of tracks I really liked and all of them broke that rule. So I just went, oh, well, fuck it. I'm going to break that rule too. And I had already made a lot of the decisions in the mix. So I didn't want to muck around with the width of things too much. So I just figured I would boost the sides here. So I just did that. So you can see them come down there. If I leave this on, it just sounds so, I don't know, good and big, and I liked it. This was just addressing, turn this off. So that's what I meant, like when I'm trying to avoid the whole be really loud and synthy and bright, as I was trying to get like the warmth feeling, and I think that was why I just did that. This one's interesting. I am not really big user of the multi-band compression for a long time because I didn't understand it, but mostly because I just tried to do everything in the mix. This one's not doing a whole lot. I say that. So I'm so used to everyone hating on mud and all these kind of things. So in the EQ stage of like before I printed everything to audio, so on the MIDI tracks, I'll have basically everything has got either a high cut or sorry, a high pass, I should say, and it's most likely got a 200, 250 dip, heavy dip in most instruments, especially brass. So then I got to the end of this and I was like, wow, this just sounds really not warm. Add this and then it's suddenly a bit warmer. So this is some upwards compression. This is taming the actual like mid-range, which does get really heavy. Not a whole lot. The decisions on this was actually, I was looking at the tonal balance control and then looking at references and seeing where I have massive bumps and peaks and where they sort of have quite a flat line. So I made those decisions on this and just figured I'd try it out. And I was pretty happy with the result. This is where things get really interesting. This is Saturn, and this is in its mid-side mode, which I didn't know you could do until I stumbled across my YouTube shorts and someone was doing it. So you just go down here and you just hit mid-side. And what I've done is I've distorted the sides. Sorry, I've put the sides through a warm tube and done 35%, which is probably a little bit overkill. And that's where you get like, I think if I mute this and this one as well, you can listen to this first hit. that distorted and then, or clipped. And then it kind of is. So I'm making this even wider by slightly, I say slightly, it's 35% on the sides with that satin, and not the lows, only the tops above 150, which is probably lower than it should be, but that's okay. I wanted to break some rules, so I went and did that and had some fun with it. And you can go nuts with this. But obviously, like, it is really distorted then. So that was fun. And I was like, oh, that's an easy way to get a lot of width. And that's my thought train of like looking at the references and going, there's actually a lot of references that have wider sides than mid. And I wanted to find a way to do it that wasn't just with EQ. And then so I thought this was a good solution for that. So this second satin is just warm tape over everything at 20%. Barely a difference, but I just kind of liked it. And I used to use a very cut and paste mastering chain that was I found from a tutorial from a trailer music composer, and I just used that for a long time because it sounded good on most things. And this is sort of applying similar principles where it's like EQ, some compression, then some distortion, then some more distortion, then some more compression, but just doing it a little bit more custom to this track. That was at least the idea that I was trying to. This is crafted. This is essentially multi-band distortion. Well, yeah, I guess. The one thing I like about Crafter is you have the really good gain match, so you can slam it and you can really tell what the difference is. You can really go overboard with it pretty quick. But yeah, it's just multi-band distortion, or wave shaping, which is the same thing. And yeah, it sounds really cool. You can switch it to single, but the lows get a little bit too heavy if you do that. So I liked the multi-band mode. You can do that with Satin and with a lot of other distortion plugins, but that one just does it really well, and I like how that sounds. This is Pro C, just some very gentle mastering compression. Yeah, nothing too much, and very smooth, super slow. And then this is something I've been playing with for some time now, is like clipping, this whole idea of clipping. Some engineers tame the transients, and then you can sort of push it a little bit harder in the limiting phase if you clip the things like the really pointy transients and stuff. So all those tiny peaks up there that mostly from the hits and stuff that go above, I've clipped them just like 1 or 2 dB. Gullfoss just for like taming and bringing out things and smoothing it all over. I like to think of this as like soothe, but for like the opposite thing. You can tame things with this, but you can also bring things back based on these sort of controls. Yeah, so I usually just play with those until I get a sound that I feel is pretty accurate of what I want. And then Pro L, there's a video from Junkie XL years ago. He goes through his limiter settings, and I've just found that that has always worked, and it's getting pushed quite quickly. And I've I've essentially made a sausage. So yeah, that was just me going through this step by step by step. Basically with the decisions of I'm just trying to get this to sound as cool as I can without just copy and pasting the same mastering train that I've used for years and just doing something a bit different. Again, part of the whole like moving to Ableton and changing the process essentially. If I go through the individual stuff, it's very similar. So the medals is some OTT and EQ. Not a whole lot with the cymbals and stuff. With the toms, some EQ. Barely any. I don't really know if that's doing a whole lot. And then another clipper here, which is doing the same thing as... Actually, I don't know if this is doing it. It's not doing anything. I definitely went through some re-leveling because I, at first, went really hard with all the clipping and stuff. So I think I came back and was like, oh, that's a bit much. So I just forgot to remove that. And yeah, it's not doing anything. This is the rumble clip we went through before. I get rid of this. It's not that rumbly, but it's not that rumbly because I think before this stage, I went through and edited the drums, as in like I've clipped them through. Yeah, I think I have. I can't remember. And then some EQ. I've done the side thing here as well. And then, yeah, got this. So I probably just left this on by accident, but I probably didn't need it because I've boosted this in the mastering. But it's just a habit. I think I've just built from people saying that it's too muddy. Maybe it is too muddy still, and that's fine. And the same thing for the hits. I think I've done this for the hits because that's where all the orchestra sits, and I didn't really want the hits to mess it up. I just wanted the sizzle and the low end punch. This clip is actually doing something. It's not. Oh no, it is. Yeah, on these main hits, it's clipping a little bit. So that's the percussion. And before going to MIDI, I would have just EQ'd stuff. I wouldn't have done any compression. I really tried to play with doing the thing that everyone does and slamming the toms with the 1179 or whatever it's called. But it just didn't feel, it just felt generic and boring and I wanted to do something different. As I said, this is the theme of the track. I want to do something different. And then some things I end up doing exactly the same as I always do, and other things I didn't, which is really funny. Nothing on the bass. When I bounce these out, I would have just had a satin on these, and yeah, it would have just not slammed them, but probably tried to glue them together, knowing that I was looking at reference tracks and going like, oh, there's a big like gap here that I need to somehow fill, which I tried to with the brass and stuff like that. The synths, I think this is just a low cut. Yep. Getting rid of some presence so that it sits in the back a bit more. This piano processing is pretty much what I used on all the other stuff. So I use, oh yeah, this is a kind of interesting trick I got from Virtual Ride, I think, where you tune the piano down and then compensate it with a pitch plug in, and then you get like a softer, deeper piano. Compared to turn that off and put this back to 0, you get and then turn this back on and then pitch it down, you get like this really warm sort of sound that I really enjoyed for this. And then you just play them at low velocities and it sounds really nice. So that's pretty much the sound for all these pianos. And I've just bounced them out. The organ is a Spitfire organ, I think. And yeah, I've just smashed it with reverb. And the reverb for the piano is the Piano Hall from Pro R, and then the Gothic Cathedral on 15%, which is just sounds really nice and just washes it out a bit. The Pacific Strings is the setting from Blakis's, however you want to say that. When he did the like showing off of Pacific Strings, and it's annoying because I wanted to come up with something that was a little bit more unique, but I've never gone away from it because it just sounds so good. It just does exactly what you would expect without it. I just really like it. And then the same thing with the Hall, but I think I made it a bit wetter than that. Maybe here? No. Okay, I lied. And then the Cinematic Studio Strings is, I think, similar. Pretty similar. And then I think it's the same Hall. I think once I use a Hall somewhere, I use the same Hall to try and make it sound the same. Does that work? I'm not really sure. And then on the whole short strings bus, I've done this. I'm definitely feeling that as mud, especially for these kind of strings that are sitting up there. And then a glue compressor. Just making it a bit more consistent, and I can pull it up a little bit in the mix. And then the long strings is very similar. Low cut, because I don't need any of the lows. And then it's very, very wet. Compared to... But I did really want it in the background. So yeah. The brass decapitator. I think I've always used this on brass, just at 1. Because the E is like slightly brighter than the A. This is just different distortion emulations. And then this, yeah. So normally with the brass, I would do this. Which sounds cleaner, but it doesn't sound warm. I can actually just do that. I just liked how this sounded in the mix. That sounds thin. So yeah, it was like normally in my brain that would be like, oh, it's muddy, but yeah, I've changed that opinion. And then I've put the same score stage on this. Just to fit everything in the room. I probably don't need this. You probably don't need that, but... yeah, but it's nice. And then the brass stacks, I think I've just EQ'd a bit. Yeah, this is before. Probably didn't need that noisy EQ. This took me a while to make this song. It took me a good amount of time. And I probably changed my opinion on a lot of things during the production, and that's why it's a bit everywhere. Just like I'm sure I will next week. These guitars, I again wanted the orchestra to stand out, so I just did this cut. Not doing a whole lot. I probably could have done that a lot more aggressively. On the bass guitar, a lot of compression. And then a low cut. On the other guitars, probably just a lot of reverb that I would have bounced. Yeah. And probably low cuts as well. On the guitar stack, lots of distortion. Oh, a lot of distortion. And yeah, a lot of low cut and some EQ. On the choirs, just some EQ, but I would have, I'm boosting the heck out of these. Because choirs I have a lot of high end. You need those to stick out in the mix, because otherwise... they don't really stand out. And these would have been pretty simple. Probably a touch of OTT before I bounced them, and then either the same reverb as everything else or something similar, like a Gothic cathedral or something like that. These all just have low cuts. These all samples. Just lots of low cuts, nothing simple. Oh, this organ has a good amount. Lots of stuff going on here. Some width, some soothe. It's definitely not there. It's definitely back here. And then even some shimmer. That's just to make it really in the background. Probably just low cuts here. What on earth is it? Oh, this is the TikTok. Yeah, I wanted to make my own. So if I get rid of all these, sounds like this. So the echo just fills in the gaps a bit. Some distortion. A lot of distortion on old tape. A lot of compression. A little bit of compression. EQ. Cleaning it up a little bit. The filter just gives it the movement in the early bit. This is a room widener from Joel. He makes the JD Factory, I think it's called. He does a lot of like panning and room space sort of plugins for like mixing and stuff, and this just gave it a bit of extra space. I liked how this sounded. Wait, here. Without. Subtle difference, but I think it just adds some reflections and some filtering and some size to the overall sound. And then because it wasn't big enough, I added a dark jet to be in the background, I guess. And then all of these probably just some EQ. This is the main fast one. Oh, this is where the swing is from. So I was right before. So there's swing there and then swing there. I think this is 8th note triplets and this is 16 note triplets on the same setting, just with some swing. And then this one's got less swing to fill in the gaps and give it a little bit of groove. I think it's, if I get them off. Yeah, not quite it. And then this fills in the gaps a little bit nicer. And then that's pretty much it. That's all there is to the track. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown of the track. Let me know if you want to see more or what you want to see specifically in some tutorials or something. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.